Imagine this space filled to the ceiling with diesel fuel. That would be about 9 million litres. That's what Austral fisheries burn each year to catch around 4 million kilos of seafood. As someone who prides himself in being sustainable and whose business relies on a healthy planet and a healthy ocean, that just doesn't seem to stack up. So since 2016, we've been carbon neutral, and I'm talking to you today about how and why we got there. A good mate of mine assembled 110 Australians with big brains and generous hearts for a week-long odyssey of the senses and the mind in the waters around the East Antarctic. It was spending time with these folk in this incredible place that I confess, transformed. For the first time, I felt I had permission to talk about climate change and the motivation to do something about it. The question was, what could I do to make a difference? In my position as Austral's CEO, what might a fishing business be able to do about climate? We are best practice. We sort of pride ourselves in doing everything top shelf, so there would be no greenwashing, no cutting corners. But it also had to be an arrangement where it was able to add shareholder value. The journey and the thought processes did stimulate more than their fair share of sleepless nights. The 2 a.m. scary monsters were real. And I got to worry about whether my board and colleagues and friends might think I'd lost my mind. I got to stress about telling the world actually how much CO2 we're responsible for. And I got to wonder how could we make it all pay? Could we make the numbers stack up? If that wasn't enough, there was no real roadmap. There was no guidelines for determining how we got there. In one standout conversation I recall with a Japanese executive. He was responsible for a $500 million fish processing business in Alaska. I put to him, without leading the witness, I said, "What keeps you awake nights?" To which he said, without hesitation, it was climate change. Put simply, the fish he needed to feed those factories was swimming north, and that increased his production costs or his transport costs and the risk that he might go out of business. The process for going carbon neutral is relatively simple, I guess. Mitigate and reduce our emissions, and then, in our case, purchase offsets or carbon credits to make up the difference. Carbon captured through mangroves or seagrass might at first be a neat fit for a fishing company, but there were no established methodologies that would make that possible. So we were looking at forestry credits. First stop, maybe a nice single species forestry project. But our time in fisheries has taught us the importance of fully functioning ecosystems, and so we ended up in favour of a multi-species native regeneration project. Whilst not the cheapest of offsets, it would mean that whatever we did was above reproach. It kind of simplified this conversation about climate. Put simply, we said, if we've made the mess, then we clean it up. And in our case, that's about 200,000 trees a year. If we needed more fuel for the journey, that came in the form of our then Prime Minister making some observations about renewable energy based on what he described as ugly and noisy wind generator on an island not far from here. I remember my utter disbelief at such stupidity, and formed the view that business had a chance, that business, indeed progressive business with well-informed consumers, could offer hope and make a difference and deliver solutions where politics had failed. We did some work with consumer research. We found that maybe my views were not alone, that others in the Australian community did share a concern about climate, but interestingly, they felt that their neighbours did not share that concern. That insight, to me, screamed opportunity, and if we were able to offer a consumer who shared those values a carbon neutral product, then we might just find that our leadership would be rewarded with loyalty and premium. The next trick was to secure board support. For those of you that deal with a board, they have many obligations. I enjoy a very beautiful and loving relationship with my board, but only a fool would take this for granted. So at the July meeting in 2015, I declared to the board that it was my intention to bring to the December meeting a proposal to take the business carbon neutral. And it was met with respectful sort of stunned silence, really. But it did remind me that whatever we did, we needed to have thoroughly argued and well thought through. The December meeting arrived. The meeting had been going well. The fish business had had a good year. The profits were up. But my precious carbon neutral agenda item was slipping to the end of the program. When it did finally arrive, that anxiety sort of bubbled out and caused me to be act a little out of character. Whereupon I says to one of the directors, I said, Ikemi-san, what would your two boys say about this proposal? And he said, they would say, do it. A little more discussion, and the chairman asked for dissenting views. That's also an important distinction. There were none. The motion was passed. That was a pretty big deal. The emotion at that time was elation at having achieved something that I knew was really special, humbled by the trust and respect that the board had had in me, but also overwhelmed at the sense of responsibility that I had now to deliver on that trust. The important thing is that all happened on the 9th of December 2015. Just 3 days later, on the 12th, the world signed the Paris Climate Accord. That's like a goosebumps moment there. It was now time to get the job done. By the end of February, we're now in 2016, the team had completed an emissions accounting for the business. We'd lodged the necessary paperwork with the Australian government, and we'd bought 4 years of carbon offsets from multi-species biodiverse plantings. On the 11th of March 2016, with the support of our then Foreign Minister Julie Bishop, who had incidentally led the Australian delegation to Paris, we declared to the world that we had been carbon neutral since the beginning of 2016. From the deck of a boat in the Antarctic to that day was 402 days. We had done something special. It was like we dropped a rock in the pond, and the ripples would go out in all sorts of directions. Had no idea where that was going to go, but this deep sense that whatever happened was going to be good. The next trick was to unlock the value of our values, and this is the bit to make it pay, right? So as a bit of a stunt, we thought we could offer the globe a first cargo of carbon neutral fish. Would allow us the opportunity to profile this leadership and to give people a chance to have a bit of a buzz about all of that. Ended up that was extraordinarily successful from a point of view of generating the premium, but it failed in passing on the carbon neutral story because those customers who generously purchased that fish did not in turn pass that story on to their customers. Having learned from that experience, we now incorporate into our branding, our commitment to sustainability and climate action. We do that in a way that I believe gives our crews and staff a sense of belonging to a business for purpose. We differentiate our products in a way that adds shareholder value. We still have the business of reducing the amount of fuel we burn. And so the K-Par Kona was launched this year and we were delighted. She is hybrid electric, state of the art in terms of this class of vessel, at a cost of around $50 million. She's the most expensive boat we've built. Many in business, I think, have traditionally had the view that climate has been the province of greenies and activists. It's now increasingly clear to me that it's about risk and money, and risk and money is the language that business clearly understands. I also feel that as a business voice, we are heard different from those in the not-for-profit or even in the government sectors. And as such, we've become powerful advocates for climate action and for our oceans. 4 years on, I feel we have made a difference. We've normalised climate conversations amongst our peers and our supply chain partners. We've differentiated our brand from our competitors, and I believe we have added shareholder value. And finally, there's a personal dividend. I am so grateful to be in a position where I can find my personal and professional alignment in a way that provides me now the great joy and opportunity, which is to hope to inspire ambition in others. And in sharing a part of my story with you today, it's my hope that you too might find your Antarctic moment. I challenge you whackers to do it in 402 days.